Hello and welcome back to Something Rotten. This is The Darkness 2, Episode 1. My name is Jacob Geller. I'm here with Blake Hester. Blake, can I start off this episode right off the bat by saying, Yo! Is this the most fun game we have ever played on Something Rotten?
Discord said fuck you and completely muted whatever you just did into your mic. I'm sure I'll hear it later.
Well, I screamed. You'll hear it when you edit.
So I was actually thinking a similar thought. It's maybe not the most fun, but it's definitely only the second fun game we've ever played on this podcast. Max Payne 3 is just hard to beat. It's hard to beat, but let me walk you through my journey with this game.
Mm-hmm.
The opening cutscene started, and I was like, "Oh, okay, a lot of production value. This is the kind of edgy schlock I'm into. I can get behind this."
Mm-hmm.
Then the gameplay started, and I was like, "Oh, it's perfect. It's a perfect game."
Whew, it's so good. So as a little peek behind the scenes, we had this episode scheduled and we moved it up 3 days and moved then the second episode up a full week because both of us were just so excited to keep playing this game that I think the thought of like having to wait another 6 days to play and then another 6 days after that to record was like unbearable.
Yeah, I was playing this game and I had like the IGN wiki open just so I could like keep track of which chapter was which. And the closer I got to this week's chapter end, the like more bummed I got playing. I was like, why'd you make these fucking levels so short? Come on. Like I don't want to stop. It's weird. I was thinking about this last night. It's like, I think if you looked at this game, just like a quick compilation on YouTube, you'd be like, wow, they kind of gutted the original Darkness. It took out a lot of what made that game special. And I'm here to say, it's definitely a more brash game. It's very, like, in your face and a little more juvenile. But it feels like a very good sequel in a way I was not expecting. In terms of, like, continuing the story, continuing some of the themes, and then just making the game fun, which most sequels tend to do. You know, the Assassin's Creed 2 syndrome. Make the game good this time.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like there's so much weird stuff about this sequel that we'll talk about. I've got a little background on the development and whatever. But I was just struck by, while playing, I was like, is this the most linear game ever made?
Oh,
you know, where
interesting.
It's like, I really, and I absolutely do not say that as a negative, but it's like, I haven't played a game in such a long time where it's like, you don't do any fucking exploring, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, these levels, it's like, people kind of derogatorily referred to them as like corridor shooters, but it's like, man, I gotta say, being in a corridor shooter where every room is just like, here is a room, you're gonna shoot people, and then you're gonna go to the next room, feels so good and feels so like propulsive.
Bring back the corridor shooter, man. I actually like, I'm kind of, what is that phrase? Paralyzed by choice or something, you know? Isn't there like a more succinct phrase for it? But
analysis paralysis.
Not the one I was thinking of, but I'll take it.
Oh, well,
I'll take it. That's funny. Video games give me that all the time, where it's like, fuck, I can't go off the golden path. I got to go find the 200 coins that it's going to take me 30 minutes to get on this other path because, you know, they want to pad out their runtime. It just feels so good for a game to be like, we're just here for gore. Just go in the small room, kill everybody, then the level's going to be over. We know what we're doing here. It fucking rips.
Yeah, you know, you have your Leo Vaders, people who can kind of take an immersive sim and do all the fun things that the developers intended. And I think both of us are a little too just like dumb guy gamers to really like explore those options. But what I do like is just clicking on guys' heads and like, boy, it feels good in this game.
I mean, that said, like, the Dishonored series is like one of my all-time favorites. So, you know.
No, it's true. And hey,
I just didn't want to be called a dumb guy gamer, is what I'm saying.
Okay, I am. You can call me a dumb guy anytime. You want to know a little about the creation of this game before we start getting into it in earnest?
Yeah, because when I was playing it and it was like developed by Digital Extremes, I was like, I know the name. I know nothing of the actual company, though.
Yeah, well, so here's an interesting note. This game is made by Digital Extremes, which is a difference from Starbreeze, the original studio. It was also made in 2012, which is 5 years after the original came out. Digital Extremes has made the game Dark Sector, which is one that I put on our spreadsheet very early of like, I want to play that game Dark Sector for Something Rotten, but not a particularly well-known studio, especially not here. There's a long kind of preview written by Nathan Grayson about this game, and a lot of the kind of like pitch of it early on is Digital Extremes, who's ever heard of them? Why isn't Starbreeze making this? Like I went in skeptical and then, found this out. But really at that time, not a studio with a lot of name recognition.
Can we talk about this? As a game journalist, I think I can piss in my own pot here. Game journalists love to be like, I'm going to a studio full of people with master's degrees in computer science and art, but I haven't heard of them. Should I be skeptical of their competency? It's like, what the?
Right.
It's like a company being paid millions and millions of dollars. Maybe, look, the plenty of games come out bad, but it's just weird to walk into a room and be like, they seem like idiots. It's like, what are you talking about, dude? I mean, maybe Nathan Grayson's piece isn't exactly like that, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like looking at their development history, it is very interesting where they did like, they made Dark Sector. They made a bunch of like pinball games in the 90s. They made Dark Sector. They did like the Unreal tournaments along with Epic Games. They did ports. They did the multiplayer for Homefront. They did BioShock 2, which will actually come up. And then they made The Darkness 2. And then they made Warframe, which is weirdly one of those like biggest games in the world.
That's why I'd heard of Digital Extremes. Okay, that's right.
Warframe is one of those just kind of like, hey, do you know the subreddit for Warframe has like 10 million people in it or whatever? I also did want to call out, while we're talking about the publisher, this game has maybe the most intense publisher logo of all time when you start up the game that is also seemingly unaffected by computer volume. You pay attention to this next time you open it, because it's like the darkness tentacles ripping apart the Digital Extremes logo, and it's so loud.
I immediately skipped through that stuff because I had an inkling. I thought this game was going to be fun, and I could not be held down by any logos before the game. I just slammed enter.
You should next time just let it play for a second, because it always like jump scares me. Okay. I'm like looking at my phone and then it's like Hey Blake, our podcast is better on Nebula, right?
Oh, for sure. Everyone knows that. Early episodes every week, bonus episode for every miniseries, all the good stuff.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that you knew.
Yeah, I mean, I edit the show and I have a Google Calendar. Like, I got it under control.
Anyway, so this was made not by the original. However, they did take the original writer from the game. So it had some of that. They said that they wanted to do two things, which seem kind of contradictory. One was that they talked about how they wanted the game to be driven more thoroughly by its story, which I thought was an interesting kind of phrasing, because like The Darkness 1 is really narrative driven, that whole game is like very focused. And so it's interesting saying they want it to be more, though I think what they mean is they want it to be more linear, because they say we want it to be driven more by its story and they want the action to be more immediate. And they certainly succeeded in that second part. But I think they're just talking about like, we want to make a corridor story focused, like no side bullshit game. So I thought that was interesting. They're, what they wanted to do was this thing, this kind of game development buzzword that I love. I love when companies have like strategic dismemberment for Dead Space or whatever, where they just like come up with a thing. This game, as I mentioned last episode, quad wielding. that was their goal for this, where they wanted you to be able to hold 2 guns and then have your 2 darkness tentacles and use all of those at the same time.
Dear listener, you might recall last episode where I naively asked Jacob, what does quad wielding mean? And he, like the tease he is, he wouldn't tell me. And let me tell you, listener, I've learned. And it's something every game needs. This shit is crazy. I mean,
every game needs quad wielding.
Effectively, is you just have 2 like kind of powerful attacks tied to the bumpers, but it feels so good to have 4 different options at your disposal at all times. It's like integrated so well into the gameplay. I'm a little shocked it hasn't popped up in other games in like more pronounced ways. It feels like an awesome little mechanic that they should have just stolen from this series that immediately died after this game.
Right. So we will get back to that, but just to kind of finish up this development talk, there was an interesting point in development where the game was not almost canceled, but it was very much delayed because the entire Starbreeze team was pulled in to work on BioShock 2.
Because they did the multiplayer.
Yeah, which is also fascinating because last episode we were talking about the Psychonauts 2 documentary, and the guy who was directing BioShock 2 then went on to direct Psychonauts 2 for half of its development. Watch that documentary to learn more.
I don't think he was the director, but I think he was the lead designer on it. Just as
okay.
Yeah. Jordan Thomas was the director on BioShock 2.
Yeah, so interesting. But then they had this kind of like, and I think that's why the game had such a gap between 1 and 2 is because maybe they planned for it to come out in 2010, but working on BioShock 2 pushed it back. But that seemed good for them because in that time, they, amongst other things, they kind of went back to the drawing board and decided they wanted this really kind of radical art style, which is one of the things that immediately makes the game stand out so much from the previous one.
This game is beautiful. It, like, has barely aged. I mean, some of the characters look a little rough 11 years later, 10 or 11 years later. The environments, especially the like skyboxes with the New York City skyline, are fucking gorgeous. I put a screen cap in the like Something Rotten page in your Discord, and I like will just pull it up and look at it because I'm like, this is so impressive. Like, it has a fantastic art style.
It looks amazing, and it's one of those things where it's like sometimes you play old games on higher resolutions, and it's like, oh, this wasn't made for it. I'm playing this game at 4K, and it looks unbelievable. Like, it's one of the things that they said when they talked about it is like, you know, we say cell shading like it's an easy thing, but obviously there are many different ways of achieving it and many different styles within cell shading. The director of this game said that they went through and essentially hand painted everything in the game. That it's like they really did, and you can see it because the characters have like cross-hatching on them. You know, like one of the things, and we should say, it's a game based on a comic book story, and this just looks so incredibly comic booky. It looks, you know, like I didn't think the Darkness 1 looked bad, but it did just kind of look like a realistically styled PS3 game, and this looks like a comic book in a really beautiful way.
I'm sure I'm going to say this and listeners will be able to point out 100 other examples, but like the only game I can think of that like mimics comics this well is you remember that old Ubisoft game? They recently remade it, weirdly. 13.
Yes.
That like literally would play out like a moving comic. That game was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you have like Comics Zone.
Oh, sure.
And like I do think, you know, I think the Borderlands games are very good looking with that style that they do and whatever, but this having a comic source of inspiration and then doing it just and like mixed with extreme gore, which I feel like I guess Borderlands kind of does, but like you don't see many cel shaded games that are also incredibly violent in this way, and it's a match made in heaven, let me tell you.
Did you ever play 13?
No.
Dude, it's so cool. We Maybe we should play that. Not the remake. I think
Add
that
it
was
to the
bad.
list.
But dude, it was like you'd be playing and then like comic panels would pop on screen while like showing something else happening, or there'd be like thwam, thud, boom. Oh,
Right.
that game's sick.
Yeah. I mean, and we also have, obviously, Max Payne did the comic book things, and recently, something like Hi-Fi Rush is really, really gorgeous. But again, it's like, this very particular vision of comic bookiness is pulled off. Starbreeze, apparently, was not given the option of making the sequel. They were making Syndicate at the time. Remember Syndicate?
The low-key best Assassin's Creed game?
Nope, just a game called Syndicate, a
cyberpunk
first-person shooter.
Fuck no.
I remember the like cover art of it is kind of striking, but like no, I know nothing about this game. Syndicate is a first-person shooter set in 2069.
Yeah, I've never heard of this in my life.
And then the last thing that I want to say is that Jackie has been replaced, the voice actor, and at first I wrote this down, as a temp voice, they had Nolan North do all the lines, which is very funny to be like, we can't figure it out, so Nolan North, you record all these first.
I think the only way they could get away with that is that was like maybe the year Nolan North got really famous. Like the week before he blew up and could big league everyone.
It's so funny. But the ultimate voice for Jackie is now Brian Bloom, who is notably BJ fucking Blazkowicz. He's Mr. Wolfenstein.
He's maybe one of the low-key best voice actors in games, but we just don't talk about him like a Troy Baker or Nolan North or anyone in The Last of Us.
Yeah, he has like one of those just enormous IMDb's. Where you can look through, and he's been, main characters in games. He's been additional voices in a bunch of games. He directed the A-Team movie, or maybe he just wrote it.
What?
Yeah, so it's like he's done real stuff. No, he co-wrote and starred in the A-Team movie. Yeah, which is very weird. Most recently, he is Captain America in Marvel's Midnight Suns, which is a game that I like a lot. But yeah, so it's, like they did replace their main character, which is definitely a choice when games do that.
Yeah.
That sometimes you're like, what does this mean? How do you feel about the new performance?
I think it works a lot. This Jackie feels like not a complete reinvention of the character. It feels like a Jackie who I think appropriately for the story has become a bit egotistical and maybe a little psychotic or psychopathic. Is that a word? Psychopathic?
Yeah, though, I mean, psychotic might literally play into the plot.
Yeah, sure. I think the switch to Brian Bloom makes sense because he's delivering a much more aggressive version of that character, which, like, not to say the other actor couldn't, I'm sure they could have, but, like, I don't know. Brian Bloom's bringing a lot to this new version of Jackie, which I think works and feels appropriate for the story they're telling after the first game.
The original Jackie just was so understated all of the time. I mean, essentially a character that never raised his voice, which was a choice. And, again, we like the story of that first game, but, like, he is just able to be more dynamic in this, and I'm sure that's in part up to direction, but it's nice that that the actor is able to do it. Mike Patton as the Darkness is back, and I think just killing it. Yeah. I think his performance in this game is again much more dynamic than the first game, and I'm really enjoying his voice lines.
Yeah, the Darkness, put him in every game. FIFA, Madden.
Yeah, he's like Gabriel from Malignant. Yeah. Just put him in.
Disco Elysium, Astrobot, whatever. Put the Darkness in.
Honestly, Blake, you haven't played Disco Elysium. The opening monologue of Disco Elysium sounds remarkably like the Darkness.
Is Disco Elysium a rotten game? I know it's a long game, which gives me pause, but...
I mean, almost certainly yes. It has more like optimism in its soul, but boy, that game is rotten as hell.
Maybe I'm gonna add it to the list, but we'll see.
That's like a listener tier. It's like once we have like 50,000 weekly subscribers.
Yeah, when I can pay my rent on Something Rotten, I'll play a 20-hour game for this podcast.
Hell yeah. All right. So now that we've got the background out of the way, let's jump into it. The section we played, 2 hours long.
Thereabouts, yeah.
Chock fucking full. So talk about the opening scene. What happens there?
Well, you're going to dinner. Jackie's now the head of his crime family, I guess, having taken over for the uncle. You'll remember in the first game, you actually have the choice to say yes or no. I don't know what happens if you say no. I said yes because I knew that was a plot point in this game. So you're going to a dinner. You know what it seems like, and this is kind of funny in a like cute way. As cute as you can be as a mobster doing this shit, is it seems like you're being set up on kind of a blind date, because Ginny is dead, and like it's not like a big mob meeting. Your friend Paulie or Vinny, Tony, whoever the fuck is like, hey, it's the two sisters from that club, you know them? And then Jackie has this very funny moment when he meets the sisters. He's like, you remember us, don't you, Jackie? And he's like, listen, ladies, I really wish I did. I just don't, which is a funny thing to say to them. So he's sitting there.
I think, here, wait, before you do that, the thing that I wrote down was that this feels very much like the legendary Goodfellas oneer. Where it's like, you're walking through the restaurant, you have something to say to every character. Everyone knows you. It's like, hey, Paulie, how's the family? And Paulie's like, which one? Ha ha ha.
Yeah.
And it's like every character has something like that. And it's just this very much like Jackie owns this shit. He's the king of the world.
It's very good. It's very striking. It looks beautiful. There's a lot going on. You'll notice a brief, what you think might be throwaway moment where you're walking through and a guy hurriedly tries to get his check. Did you notice that?
No.
Oh, it's as you're walking through, a guy he starts like trying to usher the waiter over, and then he runs into the waiter or something. There's a guy who is trying to leave quickly, which becomes a big plot point.
Oh, interesting. I was distracted by that lady who was like, my ravioli is too spicy. I can't taste anything except spice, which I just thought was very funny.
I didn't notice that one. Anyway, you sit down with these sisters. Jackie's like, broads, I don't know y'all, but you're looking good in all your cell-shaded glory. And I was like, Jackie, brother, agree. And then here's a great storytelling moment I just love. Shocking act of violence that happens unexpectedly. One of the ladies gets a bullet through the eye mid-sentence, and all hell breaks loose. Vinny's rigatoni emporium blows up. It's just like consumed.
I mean, a car drives through the window.
Yeah, a car comes through. Just like, dudes fill this place with guns. Your leg is like destroyed. They show it at some point, and it's like the bones are broken. It has been, I think, set on fire at some point. Like, it's completely maimed. So one of your buds starts dragging you, and you're shooting it, dude, through this fucking restaurant while you're being dragged. It rules.
It rules.
It's just so good. There's more production value in this opening 4 minutes than the entirety of the Darkness one.
Yeah, I think one of the remarkable things about it is how smooth it is. And it's one of those things that's hard to describe, but like sometimes you play a game set piece and the things just happen like a couple beats too far apart from each other, and it is what separates something like Uncharted from other games, is like that ability to like really time out every single thing to happen exactly at the moment you want to. And this just feels kind of seamless. Like, it never feels like the game is kind of waiting on something you do to do the next thing.
It also, like, AJ and me on Plug, our podcast Region Free about films, we were watching Ricky O, the story of Ricky, aside from an impeccably named movie. A movie we talked about has great pacing because you're there for one thing only, and that's the fighting and the gore, and it gets to that within 5 minutes. And similarly, I think this game is like, look, we know why you're here. You want the monster, you want the kills, And so you go through a 2-minute cutscene, and then you're immediately into it. And Jackie's immediately shooting guns. You're immediately getting the darkness soon thereafter. Like, the game is not teasing it long, which I really like.
No, not at all. I mean, because the game is not long,
Right,
period.
right.
And so it's got to get this shit. But so, yeah, one of the really cool things is while you're being dragged through, you hear
The
Mike
darkness.
Patton, the
Yeah.
darkness's voice being like, Jackie, use me. Come on, use it. And you're kind of learning that, like, it's not totally clear all the events that have transpired from the previous game, but like it's like Jackie has controlled the darkness by just completely repressing it. You know, and I think we can talk about a lot. There is a lot of addiction metaphor going on here, much more explicitly than the first game.
Wow, I'm gonna show myself as a bad recovering addict. I didn't pick up any of that, actually.
Oh, really?
There's definitely some stuff, and this is true of the first game as well, and I want to talk about some of the themes in this series that I feel are directly applicable to like my experience as an addict, but in terms of like this game is about addiction, I don't think I picked it up at all.
I mean, because those monologues are back where Jackie's kind of under a spotlight and he's talking, and he says almost literally, like, once you start using, you can't stop.
Oh, okay. Yes. Okay, I did hear that. But beyond that, none of it stood out to me. That's weird.
But it's, you know, like one of the kind of fascinating things about this opening scene is you are getting the sense that Jackie has the power to just, you know, with the wrath of a god, destroy everyone attacking him. And he's holding off on it because he knows that if you let the darkness out, like, there's no going back.
Yeah.
You know, that, like, once it comes out, it's just in control. And so it takes until, you know, your leg is fucked up, you're trapped in a kitchen, there's gas leaking from a stove, and someone throws, like, a Molotov cocktail in, and it just explodes. And you get the sense of just, like, Jackie's either gonna fucking die right now, or he's going to use the darkness. And guess what?
Or everyone in the borough of Brooklyn is going to die instead, which is what happens. Mm-hmm. It's kind of funny that Molotov cocktail, the implication is they didn't bring that with them. They just took it from the bar and made it really quick, which is kind of a funny thing to just be like, your weapons are already there for you.
Here's a question that I have. Did you watch the Previously on the Darkness feature?
No, I didn't.
It is really interesting because, one, it's delivered by that kind of crazy guy, that you meet later, who, like, Jackie has investigating that cult for him. And so the delivery is kind of fun. But also, it gives more background on the darkness in, like, 2 paragraphs than we got the entire first game. Because it's talking about the history of the comic books. And so it's saying, like, it's kind of saying, hey, the darkness, you know, before there was light, the darkness was hanging out, and then, like, God created light, and then the darkness was pissed. And so you get these kind of, like, mythological origins that we talked a little about in the comic book, but, like, did not come up in the first game almost at all.
Okay, I found it on YouTube. I'm going to watch that before the next episode.
Yeah, it's
very interesting.
It's pretty cool. I wrote pretty good in my notes about, like, you know, because usually those things can be boring. Here's the other thing I wanted to talk about with this opening, because I think we're going to be very positive on this game, but I have some notes, and almost all of them are about women in this game. Because not the best.
It's gonna get way worse than this level. There's a level soon after that is bleak, but the first woman you see is just like her freaking boobs are falling out of her damn dress. She's talking like, and I'm sorry to say this, she's talking like a dumb bimbo, which is not great. Mm-hmm. It's really not great. There was only like 2 women in the first Darkness, but they were smart, cool, great characters.
They were good.
Granted, one got kitchen sinked or refrigerated or whatever the saying is. Fridged. Yes. But like, at least Jenny wasn't like, you know, Jackie, let me suck you off. And that's every lady in this game is like just some slave to men.
You know, you have both. There are multiple tropes happening at the same time, which is that one, they are painted as bimbos, generally, but also there is this thing, and I credit Anita Sarkeesian's, like tropes versus women in video game series with helping me identify this, but this idea of like women as set dressing, where it's not saying necessarily that the women themselves are stupid or whatever, but it is like the only reason they exist is so you can be shocked by a hot lady getting killed.
Yeah.
Essentially, and that's exactly what happens in the beginning of this game is you meet two women, you talk to them long enough that you can look at both of their cleavage, and then they get horribly murdered. And it's like that's how this game feels about women generally. Like that's just what happens.
And later in the game, you don't see any of the women killed in a specific level in a brothel, but like the violence, either like physical or sexual, you're kind of seeing inflicted upon them or implied upon them, is the like level's impetus to make you want to kill everyone when it kind of flips that switch. Like it's constantly abusing its characters in order to give you a reason to have fun in the gameplay levels.
Yeah, I not my life experience to make the call, but one of the worst depictions of sex work in a game, and I don't mean worst as in both, I mean worst in it looks bad, but also in like, boy, this shit sucks. Like, I wish they had talked to anyone about it.
There is obviously, like, sex trafficking is obviously a thing, and this is what it's getting at, but video games or just like stories in general never seem to want to explore the realities of sex trafficking. So instead it's like, how garish and like gaudy and also a little sexy can we make this? It's like, be horrified by it, but have a confused boner the whole time. You know what I'm saying? Like, you still are supposed to think the women later in this game are hot, even though like you're watching them be like abused. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and it's like, there are very few sex workers, I think, who would be like, yeah, this job is the best. There are no downsides.
Sure.
People I've talked to have been like, yeah, this shit sucks all the time. But what the game doesn't do is let any of them say that at all. Instead, it's just like, the women are all just junkies and or being abused and or like making sex noises, and like that's all they are. You never get, even the one you talk to has nothing to say. It's just like, here's where the gun is. Hope I don't die in 2 scenes, and then she does.
Yeah, and then it's never even like actually shown. You just see her body hanging in the back of a different scene.
Yeah, so I wanted to say that. I mean, we're half an hour in. I wanted to say that early on just because it's like, we're gonna talk a lot about how much we like this game, and it's like, you can be critical of the things you like, and I think this game is really shitty towards women, even though, in general, it's a game that I very much enjoyed.
So no good way to transition into this. Immediately, you get your darkness powers, and this game becomes the greatest game ever made. It's just how it goes.
Yep.
These things are not mutually exclusive. It can be really awful in its view of women, and also the only game I want to play for the rest of my life.
So here's the major difference between the first game and this is in the first game, you had your 2 darkness tentacles that were kind of in the corners of the screen all the time, and they were these like big, slow, deliberate things. They were like moray eels just hanging up there. And in this game, they are a whip combined with the chest burster from Alien. Like, that's what they've turned them into. And the first thing that you do in the game is you do this like execution on a guy where the darkness like binds him and then just like goes through and shoots out of his chest like the alien. Like, it's just the animation on these things is incredible.
I would love to know if this was a conversation Digital Extremes had. We talked about this on one of the Darkness 1 episodes, where it's like, you see cutscenes of the Darkness doing the coolest shit, and then you are never able to actually have that power fantasy in the gameplay. And it feels like maybe a meeting was had at Digital Extremes where it's like, hey, we need to make sure the actual gameplay is as cool as the cutscenes of the darkness
Yes.
powers. And it, for the most part, feels fucking badass at all times.
Yeah, so in the first game you had multiple different darkness abilities, but you could only select one at the same time. So if you wanted to like have the one that slithered on the ground, you couldn't also tail whip people. And if you wanted to have the darkness guns, you can throw the black hole and all that. And what they've done here is make all of those things accessible all the time. And here is Blake, this is interesting.
Tell me, brother.
Have you played BioShock 2?
No, actually.
One of the big things in BioShock 2 that is not present in 1 is being able to use your plasmids, your magic powers, at the same time as your guns. In 1, you could use the gun, and then you'd kind of switch to your plasmid, and you'd switch back and forth. And in 2, you're using both of them at the same time. And this feels like the extension of that, which makes sense because they worked on that game, of being like, we want you to have as many options available in like a millisecond as you can, because you don't have to hamper your ability to do one thing to do anything else in this game. You can be dual wielding pistols and simultaneously pick up a pipe and throw it through a man's chest with the darkness arms.
And I think like that emphasis on active verbs, it makes the game play a little bit like the new Doom or kind of the Wolfenstein games, where you are incentivized to be running at characters rather than like ducking and covering from them.
Yeah, you never take cover in this.
The way I am playing is similar to Doom and Doom Eternal. Like my health is constantly going from full to nearly empty, full, nearly empty, as I'm running around, getting the shit shot out of me, but killing people up close. And then, eating their hearts to get health back. Like, I'm playing very aggressively in that way, which is awesome compared to the original, where I was hiding behind corners and, like, just sending fucking black holes at them until the game was over.
Yeah, so they have this whole... I mean, they've really narrowed in on, like, 3 things that the darkness arms heads can do, which is, 1, they can pick up things and throw them. So there are just all sorts of objects littered around. Most satisfying are big pipes, which you can impale people with and stick them to the wall, but also car doors or other kind of large rectangular things, which you can use as a shield you can hold in front of you while shooting, and then you can throw them and they slice fucking guys in half. Like, they just bisect them. You can pick up things like that. Go ahead.
That's the left bumper, and then the right bumper, you can actually control the swing of the darkness arm in the directions you want, and you can later...
It's like Revengeance!
Yeah, you can later upgrade it to be like, okay, if I swipe up, it sends the guy up, where they will hang in the air for a second, then you can swipe down for ground pounds, you can swipe across on weak enemies to cut them in half. It's so cool. Like it almost has I guess a Revengeance or a hack and slash feel to it, like, tied to the right bumper.
Yeah, and then the third thing that it can do is it can do these pretty kind of involved executions, where when someone is weakened but not totally dead, you can grab them, and initially you only have access to one, which is getting more health, but eventually there's a whole skill tree in this game. Eventually you can upgrade it to kind of give you more ammo or do whatever. And so in the kind of same way as Doom Glory kills work, you're running towards people to get these executions so you can regain the health. And the executions are holy shit. What's your favorite one?
I like the one where there's a point system in this game, so everything is tied to points, and one of the moves is called Wishbone. And you just grab a guy by the legs and tear him down the middle.
Yeah.
And I think I like it the most because the word Wishbone pops up on screen afterwards, and it makes me laugh every time.
Yeah. I really like... You know what? I just realized I think I must have turned those point markers off because they're not popping up for me. And it's like, I've played this game before. That was a long time ago. And so I forgot that they were originally there. I should try to turn them back on.
Yeah, it doesn't add much. It's not like you're really keeping track of those, but it's fun. And the numbers go up type of way.
I really like the ones. I love how scared guys are of the darkness arms. And so there's one where it's like it picks it up and the other head like screams at him and the guy screams and then it like tears off his head. And it just, I mean, you know, when you talk about player empowerment, it's like, I have never felt more empowered than when playing this game. You truly does. And it works narratively in the way where it's like the darkness is seductive. It's the power. You want to have the power. It's like, I never want to not have these arms. You know?
God help me if this game takes them away like the first game did a couple times.
And then replacing the other big darkness power in this. In the previous game, you had all these little darklings you could summon. There were little portals on the ground and you could pull up one who would melee fight or pull up one that had a gun. And in this, there's only one, and you don't tell him what to do necessarily, but he's just kind of around all the time. What'd you think about this guy?
He's fucking shit up out there. He's so useful. He's constantly like, you'll see him like incapacitating dudes, leaving them open for like executions. He rules. He's great. I'm so glad they minimized this whole mechanic to basically no interaction. The game will just do it for you. It's great.
Yeah, although you can get a very fun skill where you can pick him up with the darkness arm and then throw him at guys and then he like tears them up. He's got like a Union Jack kind of like tattered jersey on, and he has a dead cat on his head. He's got like a cat skin that he's wearing, which I just thought was funny.
I didn't notice the cat skin. That's funny. I'll have to relook at him.
And then there are occasionally scenes where you actually control him going. We've only had like one of these, I think, but you like run through a vent as him and you do some like stealth kills. This is a unimportant bit. Did you have a hard time getting through that vent?
No. I thought it felt great. Weird.
I wondered if it was like a frame rate thing where I was getting caught on what felt like the edges of geometry, where it was like it was like he was a little too big to fit through the vent. It was just, I think it's probably playing this game at a resolution and frame rate much higher than they thought anyone would is like revealing some of the breaks in the system.
I'm playing it at max settings, so I don't know.
Yeah, who knows?
Are you playing with mouse and keyboard or controller?
Oh yeah, mouse and keyboard.
So I switched over to controller because one weird thing I have is it would never give me the on-screen buttons for the keyboard.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
And it would only give me the Xbox ones, and I'm like, I am not going to click into the options to learn every keybind in this game manually. So that's like the one, I guess that's a bug, but that's the only issue I've really seen with the game so far.
Yeah, I agree, and I saw that and was kind of like, well, whatever. But it does run great. I mean, most games that are 11 years old run great, but it looks great and it runs great. So your restaurant is attacked. You let the darkness out. This game does a little more of people acknowledging the darkness, but still has a lot of people not acknowledging the darkness.
Yeah.
Where you get the sense that people who are on your side just know that Jackie is invincible. But maybe haven't thought about it more than that.
He's just a demon. I mean, look, if you worked for a crime family and the head of the family was an invincible spawn of Satan, I'd feel a lot of job security in that, and I wouldn't question it too much.
That's right. The butcher does acknowledge it a little. He's like, "Oh, Jackie, got that darkness back in you." Okay, so he knows what's happening.
Yeah.
Another note that I wrote very early on here is, if you thought the first game was Italian, because they are, boy, they have turned that dial all the way up.
Fucking That's Amore is basically playing in the background of this game the entire time, just like an accordion slowly going throughout the entire thing.
So you're chasing these guys through the streets after you've unleashed your darkness powers, and then you get hit by a subway train, and something interesting happens, which is you wake up and you are not in New York anymore.
You're in an asylum, and it's very confusing. I'm still not sure what's going on here. I mean, I think that's the fucking point. But these are uncharacteristically bright and sunny levels where Jackie is like, there's no powers. Everyone seems to care a lot about Jackie, but he's very sick. And it's very confusing.
It's kind of, it's doing the like Wizard of Oz thing where all of the characters from the game are now people who work at the asylum or are sometimes also patients of the asylum. What I do like about this is they're not doing their Italian thing anymore.
Yeah.
So you have like Vinny the Grape or Jimmy the Grape or whoever, but he's like, Jackie, I'm your doctor, and I'm really concerned about you. And it's like, for this guy who's been like, hey, we're gonna show him what's going on for the whole game. It's like, it's very funny to have these characters playing kind of low key.
I am just praying to whatever God will listen that this does not end up being the real world, and the bait and switch at the end was all in Jackie's mind. I'm like, these are only cool until you tell me this is real. And then this is a bad twist, but for what they are, they're kind of fun for right now.
Yeah, I do. There are a couple kind of cute things in it. There's one where you wake up and you can see the Darkness comics next to you, which is fun. This game has working mirrors, which I was very excited about. And in one of them, you can see when you're in the asylum, you look at him and he's got like a shaved head, which is obviously not the Jackie we know. Yeah, there's a mirror in your like cell. And you can look at it.
I didn't see that. Cool.
But this raises the question of, in the first game when Jackie died, he went to World War I hell, and in this game when Jackie dies, he goes to this asylum. And so it is kind of a change in like how it works.
And is this hell?
Is this hell? And is it, what we're getting that was a plot point in the first one is this theme of the darkness is trying to take over Jackie. Like they are fighting for control of kind of Jackie's body. And in this, sorry, I'm looking at before this note, you go back to the mansion, and there's this kind of hub area mansion level between levels where you can kind of walk around and talk to people, but like not...
It's cool.
It's very pretty, and I like the design of it. There's not that much to do. It kind of seems... In one of the interviews, actually, they were like, maybe we could have added more side missions, but we didn't really have the budget. So I think at some point there was plans for it to be more of a hub world. I wrote down that Tony said, now, Jackie, don't take this the wrong way, but I've got a sausage with your name on it. See, I knew you would take it the wrong way. It's like, so.
I do like them from a pacing perspective, though, because this game is so fucking nuts at all times. It's nice to have just like a 3-minute break at your apartment, which I don't know if you'll really get beyond the opening minutes of this game ever again. But it was nice to be like, okay, nothing's gonna happen in this apartment. This is a nice break. One of the guys did drop a ableist slur in this damn apartment, which is 2 for 2 on the darkness using the R word. I was not super into that.
We'll see. Will it use the C word as well?
Yeah. But the apartment is so fun. It's like it looks like Donald Trump's apartment. And
it has this unbelievable skybox that you talked about.
Yeah.
That you could just go outside and like look at those buildings forever.
So something about the skybox, I guess I didn't really think about with the first game, is when these games take place. Obviously, you have a pager in the first game, which I don't think many people are using by 2007. But it really hit it home for me that these games either take place in the 90s or at the earliest 2000 or 2001. Because in one of the skyboxes, I noticed the Twin Towers are there.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
I had never thought about it. But yeah, it's like no one has cell phones.
Yeah.
And especially, I mean, if this game came out in 2012, like we had that shit. That is really fascinating.
Yeah, I'm posting.
I had never thought about these.
Here's a screen grab. sorry, this is bad audio, but like there's a screen grab I'm posting for you. You can see them in the background of this.
Right, yeah, there they are.
There you go. Fun little fact.
So then you go out on another mission. You're chasing this little weasel guy, but the important thing about this mission is you see Jenny.
Yeah, you start having flashbacks, and like juxtaposed against the two twins at the beginning and the later level at a brothel. You know what, Jenny? She's still a great character. She's still. I know she was put in the refrigerator, but this is a nice moment for Jackie. Jenny's just great. I like her a lot.
Yeah, so you're in like an old diner, and Jenny is there, and she talks to you, and you like dance with her, and you try to kiss her, and then she's like, "Hey, come back here," and then she disappears, and the diner's all run down.
I think in some ways Jenny's more effective in this game. Because it's like, obviously the good character moments with Jenny is in the first game is when she softened Jackie, especially like in the apartment when you can watch the movies together. But like, because Jackie is now the head of the crime family and that like requires some level of like, you know, gruffness or just like over the topness and like machismo, like she's very effective in softening Jackie in this game. I really like how Jackie immediately like kind of becomes a puppy dog around her in this moment.
Right. Well, and they've talked about, it's like multiple characters are like, bro, you are so hung up on this. Yeah. You know, like his aunt, when you go back to the mansion, you like light a candle for her.
Very Catholic.
Yeah. So it's clear. It's like Jackie's whole life is basically, it seems like being a mob boss is like this facade, and he kind of doesn't have anything else because his whole world died when Jenny died. I will say, I think she's great in this scene.
You do see her like weirdly crucified later in the game, which is kind of strange. She's like,
oh, you do see that. And I just generally think because she is dead, her character in this game feels so much more just like she only exists for Jackie to feel bad.
Sure.
You know, like I think she's which you could totally say about the first game as well, but in the kind of realm of the Darkness 2 only using women as like plot devices for its men, you know, it is a little bit of a bummer that it's like when I see her in that diner, I'm like, the only reason you're here is to make Jackie like sad and a little horny, and it's like you don't have it's like because she's a hallucination, and so it's just kind of like she's a good character, but also she doesn't even count as a character because she's just like, we know she's dead.
Right. On the other hand, at least she shows up. Like God of War 2018 had another sad big man, but like we didn't even get to see his wife in that game. You know what I'm saying? Like at least Jenny gets to like show up and talk and still have a personality in this.
It is, I mean, it's like she is unquestionably the game's most kind of compelling character still. It's just, you know, she is a victim of her circumstances, and her circumstances are she was killed in the first game.
But later in the game when you go to the asylum, like there's a very interesting moment with Jenny as a character.
Yeah. So I mean, let's just talk about that now. We don't have to go right in order. So yeah, the second trip to the asylum that you make, Jenny is your doctor, or like the therapist, psychiatrist. Having
been hospitalized in an institution before, you sometimes just have a lot of doctors and therapists. So you know, she's just one of perhaps many that Jackie has. It's never explicitly clear though.
Yeah, but in this asylum, I mean, it's like we should say Jackie is not buying it. He's freaking out the whole time. And so when he sees that Jenny is alive, he's kind of like, no. Like, this is,
we got to get out of here.
I don't like what's going on. And ultimately, the whole section that we played at ends with him making like an escape from the asylum where he runs away. Also, did you notice that the janitor at the asylum is the Darkling?
No, I didn't. That's very funny.
It's great. His name in the I can't remember if this is named as the Darkling, but as the janitor, he's named Nobby, and he's just this kind of like little hunched over man who's like, yeah, Jackie, run in the asylum.
I did notice him. That's so funny.
He does. The Darkling does a lot of stuff. I wrote down that there are scenes where he will piss on corpses.
Yeah, I did notice that. It's very fun.
So yeah, you do your next mission. You're chasing this little like informant guy. There's not that much that happens here, but I did want to point out that the link between this and the Yakuza games is that you fight a wrecking ball.
I was gonna say this. I was gonna say the same thing. Yeah, didn't know Like a Dragon had a Darkness 2 homage in it.
Yeah, see, you fight this guy in a wrecking ball. It's fine, you throw propane tanks at him. But then the next, and you talk to this guy and he was like hired by someone scary. That's what you find out, is there's essentially a cult after Jackie. And this cult, it turns out, wants to steal his darkness powers.
And they love crucifying people. Not enough crucifixion scenes in games. That's a good way to catch your player off guard, is to introduce crucifixion.
They love crucifying. I was thinking about, there's that side mission in Cyberpunk where you crucify a guy, and I was like, are there other, I Am Jesus Christ, still unreleased at the time of this recording. We'll see if there's a crucifixion scene in that game.
Do they still crucify people?
Like in real life?
Yeah, is that a thing? Do people
I don't think so. It might be like a legal execution method in Missouri or something, but I don't think many people are getting executed by crucifixion.
I don't know. According to listverse.com, it says they still occur. I don't know what their source is, but I'll get back to you. Continue on.
Sorry, I've got to interrupt us here because it just occurred to me that some of y'all might not be listening to this podcast on Nebula, and I've got to tell you, thank you for listening to the show, but you're making a huge mistake here. Nebula is the superior experience for fans of Something Rotten. You get more episodes, bonus shows with every miniseries, you get less ads, and by less I mean none, and you get every episode a full week early. Are you only halfway done washing dishes and you need more podcast hours to pick up it? Oh, I'm going to take that sentence again. Are you only halfway done washing dishes and need more podcast hours to pick up the slack? Join Nebula right now, and Blake and I will continue to yammer through more of your household chores with whatever awful topics we're covering next week. When you join Nebula, you'll get a custom RSS feed with a premium Something Rotten feed, so you can continue listening on whatever podcast platform you already use. Not only is Nebula the best way to listen to the show, it's also the best way to ensure that we keep making it. Every subscription to Nebula means money that goes directly back to funding Something Rotten. It is direct support to us that just happens to also get you a better experience at the same time. Sign up at nebula.tv/somethingrotten to get everything I just talked about, all my Nebula exclusive videos, and everything else the platform has to offer. And so in the middle of this, there is this mission where you go to a brothel. Why?
So
why do you go there?
One of some intel basically is like, hey, the people that hit us, they use the top floors of this brothel, like floors 3 and 4. People, like, it's not part of the brothel, they go up there. So like, you're not really sure who you're going to find. It's just like, we think the people attached to this hit might be in or around here.
Yeah. So you go to this brothel, as we talked about already. It really sucks. It's a bummer to be there. It does do the thing that I like, where you get to walk through a non-chaotic version of a video game level before you then fight back through it the other way. I always think that's a nice touch, because essentially you go up, you have a contact there who is, like a sex worker, and she's like, oh, I've got a gun in my room, come on. And then just all hell breaks loose, and you start killing the dudes who work there, and then the whole place catches on fire, and suddenly you have these like crazy cult members running at you who also have like powers. They have like mutated arms and whatever.
You're introduced to one bad boy who's just got a big old light.
Yes. Yeah. They figured you out.
Those are cool enemies, because you have to, like, they'll show up when you're not expecting them, then you have to find them and shoot their light, because they will just, like, immediately blind you and weaken you. Like, they're cool.
Yeah, they've changed how lights work in this game, where in the previous one we talked about how like there were like a million sources of light per scene, and so you would kind of shoot them all out and they would just like kind of drain your darkness power. In this, there are very few lights, but you like can't do anything when you're in them.
Yeah.
And I think it's a positive change. I think it plays better.
They've also changed where it's like, in a lot of levels, you do not have to run through shooting every light. You'll notice generators. And you can shoot the generator, which will knock out like 2 or 3 lights. Like, it's definitely streamlined a lot of the lighting. And also the aiming is better. It's just quicker to shoot out the fucking lights.
Oh, it just feels so fucking good. Yeah, so you're fighting through this flaming brothel, and you walk into a room, and you get essentially blindsided by like a bunch of floodlights, and you're taken out, and you kind of black out, and you wake up, and you are being crucified.
And just so we all know, crucifixions do still happen in modern day, so this game is true to real life.
God.
Parts of Syria still seem to do it. Perhaps one case in Russia and Burma.
There are also those things that you'll occasionally read about where it's like people crucify themselves as like an act of faith.
What?
Where it's like they don't die, but they just like do it.
I guess you would have to do the feet first. Then how would you do the second hand?
I think they like stand on something, but they do. I mean, it's like they have someone help them.
You got to find better friends, bro. Like if your friends, you got to find friends that will tell you no. That is so important in a friendship.
If you got friends who crucify. So anyway, the man crucifying you is the main antagonist of this game. I didn't write down his name. Do you remember what it is?
No, he looks like the fucking Darkness and the Dishonored series if he got like hit by an acid attack or something. Like this dude's fucked up looking.
Yeah, it is a very classically like this deformed man is evil
you know what
character.
He's like the one dude who takes Slipknot, love Slipknot. There's always like one dude in 100 though that takes the band a little too literally. And that's what this dude looks like. Is like the dude at the Slipknot concert. He's like, oh yeah, if you are 555, then I am 666. And it's like, hold on, it's just a song, bro. Like this dude's a little too freaky for me.
And his goal is to steal the darkness from you. He wants the darkness power for himself. And he says, and this is like a cool and interesting plot point, he's like, it's gotta be given up willingly, but I can torture you until you give it up.
Yeah, which is fun. I like that.
And so we've got 2 for 2 torture scenes in Darkness games where you are nailed to this cross, and then there's just this big bruiser guy who's kind of working your abs, who's just punching the shit out of you. But then
Return of the Snuff, baby. We're back. Something Rotten.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah. They wheel in a TV, and they just got a live feed going, early Twitch streamers here, of this fucking Billy Badass at your apartment, just like massacring your friends, saying you actually have to choose which one of your friends is going to die at one point, which is not great. Didn't love that. I mean, it's cool narratively, but I felt bad.
Well, I will say I did not know who either of those guys were. They weren't main characters.
No, one of them is the guy who's always at the elevator waiting for you, and I was like, that's my bro. So I killed the other one.
No, it's not. I thought that too. It's not him.
Oh.
It's a different guy. Yeah, because I was like, well, I'm not killing Vinny, but actually it wasn't Vinny. It was like Freddy or something. So
well, then they also say some of the most horrific shit I've ever heard in a video game about what they're going to do to Aunt Sarah. Like it is truly unhinged shit. They're like talking about there's some definitely implications of sexual assault, but also like we're gonna cut this lady's tits off, and I'm like, what the fuck?
Oh, yeah.
You are going so hard right now, and not a good way.
Crazy. Yeah, but then you do one of the hardest in a good way kills that I've ever seen in a game, where you by sheer force of anger, you pull one of the nails, you pull your hand off the nail and pull the nail out of the crucifix. You then grab the other nail out of your hand. The guy who was kind of working your body steps up, you smash the nail through his head, pinning him to the crucifix, and then beat it in with the butt of your gun, which is just like I was mouth agape. Like it is so over the top and kind of only works because of the comic book style.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Here's the thing. Bible would have been a lot shorter if the Romans were more interested in efficiency. I'll tell you that much, because Jackie gets this shit taken care of quick.
But also, if Jesus Christ had done that at his own crucifixion, we would tell some different stories.
I would read the Bible if that's what happened. I'm not an atheist, but there's nothing in that book for me. You know, I'm good. But if that happened in it, oh my God, you best believe I'd have it on my bookshelf, the King James Version and others.
God. Yeah, so I wrote that, and then I just wrote in all caps, "This game rules." It's so fucking hot on the darkness too. So then the last real level is you go back to your mansion, and it's being taken over, and so you kind of fight through this hub world. Mm-hmm. I feel like this would be more effective if we had been to the mansion more times. Like, it's fun, but it feels like it should be like the last level, and it happens in the first half of the game. Yeah. But you go through the mansion, you're fighting guys, you're killing them all, but you can't save Aunt Sarah. And you got another woman in your life who is killed horribly in front of you.
Luckily, as far as I could tell, breasts intact, but she does get the shit stabbed out of her, and it's pretty hard to watch. I don't think they show it, but nevertheless, it was like very disturbing.
Well, yeah, so Jackie has in his room a wall full of katanas, because he's a real, like, mall ninja type guy, and I saw those and was like, I wonder if we'll ever get to use one of those katanas, and it turns out you do not, however one is used on Aunt Sarah.
Though, I believe in the cooperative multiplayer, one of the 4 characters does have a katana.
We should see if that multiplayer still works.
Yeah, 4 players, me, you, and Diego, and a computer-controlled AI.
Spoilers for next episode.
Honestly, I don't know where the story goes from. I know immediately it goes to the asylum scene we've already talked about, but like, The Darkness 1 always had the anchor of Jackie's family, you know, Jimmy the Great, the Butcher,
right,
Aunt Sarah. A lot of that has now been gutted, and I don't know where The Darkness 2 goes from here. I quite like the story. I think it's a really good sequel. I think there was, at least my perception was, it was going to just like either A, be a bad story, or kind of disregard the first game. I don't think that's true at all. I think it's a direct sequel, and like maybe not as good in a raw sense of the word, but like competently told. I'm still engaged with like the characters.
Maybe, and it's like, you know, when you're talking about a story, obviously there's the literal plot events that happen, but there's also pacing, and this game is just paced like a fucking bullet train. And so it's like, you know, what held The Darkness 1 down is me wandering around a train station for 20 minutes, not knowing where to go. And so this game can just like bam, 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 just give you plot beats.
Yeah.
And I think that's a real advantage.
And I'm not particularly that invested in like the enemy, the antagonist of this game, and the like mumbo jumbo about the darkness. But in terms of like Jackie and his loved ones, like I am very eager to get back to the game today and be like, okay, what is happening after this assault on, you know, my apartment? Like, what happens next? I think the story's good. I really like it. Before we close out, feel like we should have talked about this in an earlier episode, but since it's still applicable here, I just want to talk about like the central theme of The Darkness for a bit, which is like the thing it is obsessed with is humans losing control of themselves, which I am terrified of. That's like one of my main fears. Like as a kid, the scariest movies for me were exorcism movies. Like I could not handle the idea of like an entity taking over your body. And then as someone in recovery who, no nice way to admit this, has blacked out and woken up with foggy memories of like, I went where? I did what? I said what? What happened? Like, I still have like a very primal fear around loss of control. And so like, I think this game obviously explores it in very fantastical ways, but I think it's very effective and like being like, exploring the idea of you not being in control of your own body. For whatever reason that may be. Maybe it's just like the classical vision of like you're possessed by a demon, but also to your point, maybe there's some hints at like addiction here, you know?
I mean, I think they very much are, you know, they've referred to it as like using before. So I would say it's, you know, maybe even more than just general addiction. They're talking about like heroin or something. But like there's this character who's this kind of a crazy guy who has like done a bunch of research on the darkness, and you get like Jackie kind of hired him, and he says like, dude, I had to leave because like being around that shit was like destroying my brain. You know, where it's like he doesn't even have the darkness, but he's just like, you were making me spend so much time kind of in the presence of this that I felt like I was losing it. And so I had to go. And then you like pull him back into the story. And so, you know, you get the sense that it's like Jackie is kind of like pulling this guy back into this world that he tried to escape from. But it's definitely, I mean, I think reductively, you could just kind of look at the story as a kind of like absolute power corrupting absolutely sort of thing. But I think there is more going on, and that's really kind of driven home by how much you get the sense that Jackie like doesn't want to be doing this, or he tried to stop doing it. You know, I think that's kind of the most compelling bit of his character, is him recognizing that it's bad for him to use the darkness, but being put into situations where he kind of has no choice.
Yeah, it makes me a little embarrassed that I kind of, for whatever reason, the direct addiction analogies in this game kind of flew over my head. I don't know why I didn't really get that. But that said, for a lot of the darkness, I have been thinking about that because like my fears of loss of control are very much tied to how much of my life I spent not in full control of my motor functions. You know what I'm saying? I'm not here to act like you're completely absolved of what you do under addiction, but also like, you know, you're not always operating at your peak mental capacity at those times. So it's like, I have been thinking about that a lot while playing this game, and just like kind of revisiting a lot of those points in my life and be like, you know what? Never had a fucking ancient monster growing out of me, but I feel like I can empathize with some of Jackie's ongoing trauma he is going through, kind of at his own hands to some degree. You know? Like, I mean, Jackie wants out, but also he uses the darkness. I mean, the darkness uses him, whatever. But like, you know, I am pressing the buttons that make Jackie's life worse. You know? And the game only works if Jackie uses his powers to get what he wants. So some interesting stuff in there.
And you were close personal friends of Mike Patton, so you're familiar with that voice just showing up.
Yeah, weirdly enough, every drink I had, he was just behind me going like, "Consume, Blake."
Yes, Blake.
I wish I was friends with Mike Patton. He seems sick.
Look, well, that's the end of this episode, because I know more than anything in the world, Blake and I just want to finish playing this game.
Oh, dude, it's so fucked up. I gotta go to work instead of play the darkness right now. It sucks.
But yeah, that was our discussion on the first half of The Darkness 2. Next week, we will be back. We will have a special guest as well. Play this game. We'll see you then.
Jacob, before we close out, would you say Jackie wants it all, but he can't have it? It's in his hands, but he can't grasp it?
Yeah, I think that's probably like the central thesis of the game.
That's a good joke, listeners, because that's the chorus to Faith, not Faith, whatever that song is by Faith No More, which Mike Patton is the singer of. Anyway, see you later. Bye.
Bye.